Rick and Morty comic issue 11. Ready Player Morty. This is way ahead in the book. We start out with Morty waking up in Rick's spaceship with his pajamas on for once. Wait, so why wasn't he wearing them earlier when Rick pulled him out of bed? Like an earlier issue. Anyways, he's annoyed at Rick for doing this without his permission. And Rick's oddly amused when he says that Morty's a sleep fighter who got him real good in the ribs. But it was sweet that instead of being mad at him, he says, "Proud of you, buddy." Rick tells Morty to put on his normal clothes, which is a shame as I was looking forward to a whole story of Morty wearing a different outfit. And he says that he'll be telling the story to his grandkids, the day Rick turned him into a man. Morty naturally gets scared, and then Summer wakes up in the back seat. It's amusing that because she's so experienced with Rick, her only reaction is a frustrated, "No! I had shit to do today!" She reveals that she and her boyfriend fell asleep in Rick's spaceship of all places. Why on earth did they do that? Of all the places they could have slept. Then Rick casually sends her boyfriend out of the spaceship into the vacuum of space, casually saying that the rule is no non-family stowaways. It's confusing until you consider that he really does love his family in his own way, and that's why he insists on being with them. Because if all he's doing is using them to help him with his schemes, he could build a robot to do that, or enslave someone. And Summer's so used to this from Rick that she just says that this is exactly why she doesn't bring boys home. Then why did she? I guess the boyfriend kept insisting on it, and for some reason she convinced herself it'd be fine. Rick then expects me to believe he's not dead and is just in suspended animation. Huh? It makes sense if we saw Rick teleport him away. He tells Summer to watch the ship for a little while, so good thing she was there, and she looks cool when she says, "Sweet," and shoves him aside to grab the wheel. And Rick says that hurts, getting a little comeuppance. But not enough considering how the story's gonna go. So Rick gets Morty out of the spaceship and Summer flies away with it, leaving them in a big city. They go to a place called HSS Academy, and Rick plans to put Morty in high school simulations until he graduates all in one day. But that doesn't make any sense. The amount of time it'd take to learn everything you need to know from all of a high school curriculum would take way more than a day. Is the machine gonna beam it all into Morty's brain while he's being kept distracted by doing a few things in the simulation? I guess so. More importantly, a high school degree from this futuristic alien world isn't gonna count where Morty's degree comes anyways. Which means he won't be able to go to college and get a high-paying job. He should be saying that, but Rick's point is that nobody needs 4 whole years to learn basic civil disobedience and rote memorization. That's the case with school before high school though. So that's Rick's only lesson? To get Morty to do civil disobedience like him? At least this scheme of his is about Rick doing what he thinks is best for his grandson, but it can't be heartwarming for real considering what's gonna put him through. Rick also reveals that somehow, Morty could actually die in the simulation even though it would just be a simulation, so nothing would actually be happening to him. That's like a dream being able to kill you. Oh, that's sweet. Summer's not gonna drive the spaceship somewhere just to have fun like a reckless teenager. She's actually just trying to look for a boyfriend. That's the responsible thing to do. Sadly, she can't find him, and says that the alignment on this thing sucks. Jerry then wakes up in the back seat. How many back seats are there? Good thing for Jerry he's not a snorer, so nobody heard him breathing before Rick left. At least Jerry explains why he's here. He had another argument with his wife. They got into a bunch of angry discussions that eventually came down to where he'd be sleeping, and Beth won. It's sweet that he immediately cheers up and says this is fun, and it's been a while since he teamed up with his daughter. Has he ever? I forget. He pushes a button asking what it does, being reckless. And I'm immediately confused when they switch bodies. Why on earth would there be a button for that? Well, I guess it's there in case of a severe emergency. Like, maybe it's there in case someone dangerous takes the wheel away from Rick in the spaceship, and he needs an easy way to triumph over him, so he'd take over his body and then get his consciousness into a clone of himself. But the problem is, if he was ever in that kind of hostage situation, obviously he would be tied up, not able to press whatever button he wants. I guess, well, there doesn't seem to be any seatbelts in here, so maybe he thinks he'd be able to move enough to press the button with his head or something while being fought off. Better yet, maybe he's counting on whoever takes over a spaceship with him in it to recklessly press the button out of curiosity, or press it by accident, or press it when trying to figure out how to get the spaceship to drive. Those are all more likely. That's the only explanation I can think of for why Rick would make this diabolus ex machina of a button. And if they only explained why it was there, it wouldn't come off that way. It'd make more sense if Rick body switched them on purpose to teach them a lesson. Anyways, the body switching works by switching their heads, as we see Summer's head on Jerry's body. So, teleportation power. Good thing their brain stems can still reach down and properly connect with the new body. This is intriguing, at least. Summer says that her body hurts everywhere and she feels powerless, while Jerry feels great and no longer has a sense of his own mortality. Summer's naturally horrified, but Jerry's actually staying positive and says that this adventure is already bringing them even closer. How in the world does Summer's reflection have Jerry's head? It's times like this where the series would make more sense with a wizard instead of technology. We even had a Rick and Morty episode with a wizard. Morty fails his first simulation because he gets beaten up by high school jocks that look like aliens. Not everyone will go through physical bullying in school though. Morty's told that there are no classes, tests, and books apparently. And Rick just says this is the school of life, hard knocks. So in the next try of the simulation, Morty runs away when he hears the bully talk to him from behind. So Rick really is helping him, but unfortunately he just says Morty cheated. So his good intention is to try to get Morty to toughen up. That's also probably why it takes him all these adventures. In the pilot episode, he was eager to show Morty aliens and Alien Planet because he can't see that stuff in school. So he's here to educate him about the entire universe, and sees that as more important than just Earth. In the next simulation, a girl thanks Morty for meeting him here as Morty's scared, and she says that she sounded nervous on the phone because this will be her first time. She puts her hand on his shoulder, and he nervously giggles, and this fails the simulation. Surprisingly, Rick was the one who failed him. I didn't know he had the power to do that. So he's in charge of it, which explains why they're allowed to be here all by themselves. I guess Rick paid a lot of money for this. Rick tells him to get back in there and seal the deal. Morty lies to the girl that he's way too experienced if anything, and he'll do whatever she says, but his awkwardness makes the lie obvious at the end, not that she gets it. Then all of a sudden she wants Morty to pay her $10. Morty can still hear Rick, who tells him to do it because it's a good deal, and he briefly takes off the simulation helmet because it's weird with Rick there. But then it turns out she was a narc and arrests him. That's entrapment. Seriously, that should be illegal as shit if it isn't already, because obviously he never would have paid her if he knew she was trying to trick him. For all he knew, the whole point of the simulation was that she was actually into him and this was practice for him. Obviously Rick wasn't actually familiar with what would happen in this, since he gave him bad advice. Or maybe he was, and that was the lesson he was trying to teach him. So Morty finally shows a backbone in the story and says he'll do this his way. So he tells her no in the trial. Then he goes to another level where a bully unrealistically thanks him for helping him understand his anger after he tried to attack him, as we see them in front of a bunch of books with pencils in simulation of detention. So, Morty got detention too for just trying to fight back against a bully? It seems like this alien world has the idiotic zero-tolerance policy too. Rather than the teachers being expected to actually pay attention to the kids they're supposed to supervise, so they'll know who's just fighting back. Or at the very least, asking a whole bunch of kids what happened, because the kids are witnesses. Then after that nonsense, which I guess was the maker of the simulation trying to encourage people like Morty to be who they are, we see a simulation of Morty being a maestro, and the text says that a ragtag band went all the way to the nationals, as he leads a high school band of violinists, and Rick is disappointed in him because he's not being just like him, I guess. And considering Rick is able to fail him at will, I guess what Morty meant by he's doing this his way is that Morty made sure Rick can't fail him at will anymore. So is their head switch thing just a meta-narrative way of telling the audience that they body switched? Because all I needed for that was the dialogue. This is much more confusing that way. So Summer threatens a bunch of aliens with a weapon trying to find her boyfriend in a building. I guess she's really desperate because he should still be in space right now. It's sweet that Jerry's proud of her. He says that when she's him, she's so freaking cool. She's commanding, making decisions, and people listen to her. She naturally explains that she has zero control of her life at home, which is very relatable, so she rocks it when they're not around. Then Beth calls her up. I guess the reason that she doesn't immediately figure out what happened when she calls her mom Jerry's body is that Jerry's such a clumsy screw-up that he probably did call her mom by accident before. She gets told that it's an emergency, as Jerry advises her to just say yes no matter what. and she gets mad at having no control after the call ends. She says she has to kill a spider. And then after she goes home, it turns out Beth just wanted to sleep with Jerry in a black lingerie. It's implied, a little too subtly, that all this led to was Summer sleeping in the car. And Jerry just says, huh, when he shouldn't have been surprised. It's her mother. She wouldn't have been good at it anyways. Morty's then told that his next simulation is a typical senior year experience on planet MWA-739, which I guess is only called that by other people, because there's no way the natives would call it that. It's not even a word. He's shown a hedgehog with cute eyes, and out of nowhere, it kills him for showing compassion. And you don't need to see that. I guess Rick's back in charge of simulations, as Morty dies over and over, in situations that clearly don't fit a school experience. Puppets eating his feet, really? Rick tells Morty that in the real world, he's gotta be a killer, and we see him behind glass and being looked at by aliens. He's told that this is intergalactic class president, so he has to battle to the death. Just like last issue, the laws sure are wacky on this alien planet. I guess Rick just has a lot of faith in Morty, and that's proven when he tells him to go be awesome, after irresponsibly saying that he's so close to finishing this thing and the tuition is non-refundable. Pretty petty of him considering that he could just use his portal gun to get as much money as he wants. So why'd he make a big deal out of the stock market device? Why'd he even try it out if he knew he'd get in trouble for it? Fortunately, as Rick's telling him to be awesome, he injects him with something that immediately puts him to sleep, letting him take advantage of his apparent sleep-biting expertise as a check of his gun. That's a pleasant surprise. Just because I read all of this comic before reviewing it doesn't mean I'll remember everything. So good thing Rick was so great at making anesthetic that he made a magical fall asleep instantly syringe that doesn't exist in the real world that immediately puts Morty in a dreaming state when that'd take hours. And I know for a fact that you don't dream after you've been knocked out with sleeping gas, because I didn't dream when I got my wisdom teeth removed. It just seemed like a couple seconds skipped ahead in time. So I don't know if it's realistic for Morty to start sleep biting that way. All he did to win was surprise the aliens by lying down and then surprise punching them all, and being surprisingly strong enough to swing one of them into the other. He never would have done this if it weren't for Rick. And don't get me started on, it's sci-fi so it can't be realistic anyways. I'm sure it is realistic somewhere in the universe. We just aren't at the technology level yet that we can experience sci-fi technology. But maybe there are spaceships, we don't know. But fantasy is much more, it can't possibly be real. Like, Star Trek had cell phones and tablets long before we actually made them. So, it was realistic after all. Also, apparently Morty had a button in the simulation he could press to surround himself with fire, which he was somehow able to press while asleep. And even though it says game over, Rick's still proud of him. Then we see Jerry celebrating over the fact that he makes no sound when he bends his legs, and he says that youth is wondrous. And Summer's friend says that he's being a nerd as she lies on her bed. Jerry asks her how long she's been scrolling on that phone, and she doesn't know. He then tells her to call the girls, drives away in a van, and takes them camping out in the woods, where, heartwarmingly enough, they actually enjoy it. They roast marshmallows and swim, and Jerry does a cannonball. He's told that Summer looks pretty when she smiles, apparently. And the girl gets confused when Jerry says, "That's what I always tell her," which was a sweet line that also reminds us how accident-prone he is. It's a shame that one of Summer's friends sarcastically says, "Hooray for Dork Weekend." But since they're all enjoying themselves, I guess that friend is just lying to save face. Then we cut to Morty in the spaceship with Rick. I actually giggled when Rick says, "You're mad, I get it. You think I was trying to turn you into someone you're not just because I repeatedly killed you and then put you in a drug-induced coma in order to win a video game. Well, you're wrong, stupid." He tells him that he misses his own youth, and hates how fast Morty's growing because soon he won't have time for adventures. Would Rick really humor him and not take him on adventures when he's in college, though? Because he takes him out of high school to go on adventures. He casually uses the spaceship to grab Summer's boyfriend and take him back into the spaceship. And then Rick saves face by speaking in a way more expected of himself after that down-to-earth moment. He says that eventually he might find a galaxy he likes living in way better than hanging out with him. Even after all the times he's explored the universe, he hasn't found that galaxy yet? Maybe he's lying. Thankfully, this is immediately preceding another heartwarming moment, as Rick admits they just wanted Morty to see that he'll always be there for him. no matter what goes down. And he showed that because every time the simulation killed him, he woke up to see Rick. Also, Rick clearly said Morty couldn't die, and he didn't die despite dying a whole bunch. So maybe Rick wakes him up from the simulation just in time. Because it wouldn't make sense for only a few simulation trials to be lethal and not all of them. Realistically, Morty tells him to never do that again, being a badass standing up for himself. Although he at least puts his hand on his shoulder as Rick calls him his buddy. It made me giggle how casual Rick was about it when Jerry and Summer teleported back to the spaceship in their own bodies. He just says that people shouldn't touch buttons that don't belong to them. But he's surprised that they're back, saying, "Oh, so I guess the body switching works on a time limit." That's very smart and prepared of Rick to do. How genre savvy of him. That means it'd be way less work for him to get back to his own body than having to make a clone of himself from Rick's DNA when he's in a different body not allowed in Rick's house. Jerry sheds a tear because he knows his own life was unsatisfactory, and later on, Beth says she's thought a lot about what he said this weekend. He tells her to disregard it, but instead, she tells him not to back down from this, and reveals that it drove her wild how he kept pushing back her advances. She simply hugs him, and Summer looks sad, clearly wanting a hug herself, and glares at Jerry saying, "You're welcome." That's her mother, can't she just ask for a hug right afterwards? That would have been a better ending. It's a very good thing they had Rick explain himself to Morty after all of this, because it helped try to make up for the over-the-top suffering Morty got put through thanks to him. I remember not liking the story as a result. I think this is based off a movie called Ready Player One. I wouldn't have known about Ready Player One if it weren't for seeing its title on the internet. So I don't know how accurate this is to the movie. It seems like it'd be a bad movie. But thankfully, Rick was doing it with good intentions instead of doing it to be selfish and get something he wants. He wanted to let Morty know he'll always be there for him, and he missed his own youth. So he's trying to relive it through Morty by telling him what to do. It's the characters that really save the story. Good thing Morty calls him out on it a lot. The story would be much worse if it had no self-awareness, because then the audience would feel alone when they see the problems with Rick and see him as the creator's pet. But at the end of the day, I just felt sorry for Morty. It was just gore with him failing the simulations over and over, rather than all of his mishaps being creative and funny, like Morty's mind blowers. What really helped the story was the intriguing subplot. There was a surprising twist where Jerry and Summer were better at living each other's lives than their own. I really wish that Rick's reason for making the body switching button was explained. It being a punishment for pressing buttons that don't belong to you seems way too petty to be satisfactory. And he clearly told Summer to press buttons that don't belong to her because that was how she was supposed to leave in the spaceship. And while it was sweet that Summer's friends enjoyed camping, the fact that one of them called it Dork Weekend puts a sour point on it all. As instead I'm just feeling sorry for Summer because her friends will think she was a dork all day, and would think she was just making excuses if she told them the truth. So we should have seen them thank Summer. But it was good to humanize what seemed like a bunch of stereotypical teenage girls, instead of them only being about staring at their phone. Too bad we never really know any of Summer's friends, beyond the one girl who has a crush on Jerry who only has a few gags around her. And even then I forgot her name.